Some may see the widespread reforms enacted by the first Ming Emperor Hongwu as acts being carried out by a tyrant, while others could interpret it as using effective authoritative action to keep China together during a time of crisis. China post-Mongol occupation was definitely a crisis situation, and Hongwu took this opportunity to consolidate power by dismantling the office of chancellor and dismissing the eunuchs and moved the capital to Nanjing. He established the embroidered uniform guard, which was a secret police loyal to him and who would be responsible for executing countless purges on the political rivals of Hongwu, who he deemed a threat. He would use the intimidation of the embroidered uniform guard to put China under martial law, with free movement within the empire being prohibited. Citizens were now required to stay in their home village and collectively partake in farming activities so that each village could be self-sufficient. This restructuring allowed the Ming to improve their barrack system and greatly increase the size of the Chinese army and navy to the point it was the largest in the world at the time. According to Hongwu, his strict rule was in the best interest of the people, and he at times showed surprising relaxation in areas such as freedom of religion, most notably with his acceptance and praise of the teachings of Islam in the so-called Hundred-Word Eulogy. In 1398, Emperor Hongwu became ill and died and was followed by his grandson Jianwen, since his son Zhu Biao had preceded him in death. Before he died, Hongwu wrote an extensive will and plan for imperial governance in the event of his passing called the Record of the Ancestors' Instructions, in which he clearly expressed his fear of Confucian ideology and the power it entrusts in the people, and preferred a strict adherence to legalist principles. Zhu Bao had not been Hongwu's only son, so when Jianwen ascended to the throne, he was instantly wary of his uncles. This apprehensiveness influenced Jianwen to surround himself with Confucian thinkers against his father's wishes, providing a pretext for his uncle Yongle, the Prince of Yan, to start the Jingnan Rebellion, marching a large army down from Beijing to Nanjing, swiftly capturing the capital in 1402 and burning down the imperial palace with Emperor Jianwen and his entire family locked inside, all perishing. Yongle got to work right away, purging all of the Confucian scholars in Nanjing, and ordered the construction of the sprawling Forbidden City Imperial Palace complex in his hometown of Beijing to serve as the new Ming capital, which interestingly today is considered the most valuable piece of real estate in the world. Although the new palace was not constructed in Nanjing, Yongle had the famous world wonder, the Porcelain Tower, built in the city, which was a 259-foot tall pagoda that would serve as a Buddhist temple. Emperor Yongle also commissioned a series of successful naval voyages to the Middle East and East Africa in search for treasure, the first journey of its kind for the Chinese. He entrusted capable Admiral Zheng He to lead the expeditions with his specially constructed fleet of Chinese treasure ships, also known as junk boats. The northern proximity of Beijing to the Mongols meant that the capital was a target for periodic raids. During a counter raid into Mongolia in 1424, Emperor Yongle, who was personally commanding the imperial troops, suffered a series of strokes and died, being followed by his son Hongxi. Hongxi did not share his father's distaste for Confucianism and was in many ways the exact opposite. He temporarily recalled the treasure missions, which he saw as a waste of money, and reinstated the position of chancellor, which was in line with his overall Confucian reforms. He moved the Ming capital back to Nanjing, but tragically suffered from a heart attack and died a year into his reign, being followed by his son Shuande. Emperor Shuande would oversee a time of relative peace, with the only negative spot being the withdrawal of Chinese occupying troops from northern Vietnam, with the admission of defeat leading China to recognize Vietnam as an independent state. The situation was safer on the northern border, as the remnants of the Chinese Mongols, now calling themselves the Northern Yuan, fell into a civil war to the Oirats, another Mongol people, neutralizing their threat. The origins of the Mongols actually go all the way back to the Scythians, who were a Persian people living in the Caucasus, who subsequently migrated to Siberia. There they settled along the banks of the Tunguska River system, which includes Lake Baikal, which became home to a series of unique cultures known as the Tungusic people. Two of the most prominent Tungusic tribes were the Xiongnu and the Donghu, with the former conquering the latter. The Xiongnu would then fall to the Xianbei, who had been a more minor ally of the Donghu. The Xianbei would splinter from internal divisions, with his successors being the Khitans, Urons, and Shiwei people, all who were relatively weak from being boxed into Mongolia by the Chinese and the Turks, who dominated Central Asia. Battles between the Gokturks tribe and the Uyghurs, another Turk tribe, led to a war and the Gokturks' brief conquest of Central Asia in 555. The Gokturks, would push the Rouran and the Shiwei out of western Mongolia, where the Shiwei would settle in southern Russia and become the Tatars, and the Rouran would head on further west, becoming the Huns, while the Khitan would maintain their independence. The Uyghurs would later defeat the Gokturks in 745 and then subsequently fall to the Kyrgyz people in 840. Kyrgyz rule was weak, and the Khitan were able to expel the Turks from Mongolia and later had military success against the Tang dynasty and Jurchen people, another Tungusic tribe, with the absorption marking the beginning of the Mongols as we know it and the founding of the Liao Empire. The Liao Empire would become the massive Mongol Empire under the leadership of Genghis Khan, but when the allied forces of Song and Jin decisively defeated the empire, it broke into smaller khanates, with the Mongols in China becoming the Yuan dynasty, and then once expelled, the northern Yuan, who resultingly did not control all of Mongolia, with the Oirats controlling the west and the Jurchens regaining the east. Emperor Xuande thought it was impractical to move the capital back to Nanjing after the expensive construction of the Forbidden City, so he once again had it moved to Beijing. Xuande died in 1435 and was followed by his oldest son, Yingzong. Emperor Yingzong oversaw a period of perceived prosperity that was shattered after the Rat Mongols launched a surprise attack, decisively defeating the Ming in 1449 at the Battle of Tumu, capturing Yingzong. The imperial court placed Yingzong's younger brother Jingtai as the new emperor, who quickly ordered the construction of the Great Wall of China on the empire's northern border to keep out the Mongols through the use of a monumental level of forced labor. Many sporadic sections of the wall had existed for over 2,000 years, but it did not truly become deserving of its great status until its unification, with the most remarkable connecting section being at Tiger Mountain, with its steep ascent of 4,100 feet acting as the eastern terminus of the wall. Yingzong charmed his way out of captivity after only a year by befriending his Mongol captors. Upon his return to Beijing, Jingtai felt his rule threatened, and he confined his brother to house arrest within the Forbidden City for the next 7 years. It is suspected in 1453 Yingzong had developed a cohort of loyalist supporters within the palace and had ordered one of his supporters to poison Emperor Jingtai's only son, killing him. Jingtai would become terminally ill in 1457 and, with no heir, easily fell to a coup which reinstated Yingzong, and Jingtai would succumb to his illness a month later. In his second term, Yingzong ended the seldom discussed long-running practice of burying concubines alive with emperors to ensure they had a sexual companion in the afterlife. Yingzong died in 1464 and was followed by his son Changhua. Changhua was a capable military leader who made the important decision to ally with the Koreans in their fight against Jurchen raiders. His focus on the military consequently left imperial affairs up to a council of eunuchs who grew in power and became corrupt. Chenghua's poor judgment of character continued with his choice of women when he became mesmerized by his consort Wan Zhen-er, who, despite being much older than him, was able to seduce him and manipulate him. Wan Zhen-er expected to become empress after she gave birth to the emperor's son, but sadly the baby boy died shortly after, and Wan Zhen-er, in her advanced age, was unable to become pregnant again. She spent the rest of her time going on tirades against Chenghua's other concubines, aborting their babies whenever they fell pregnant, and at times killing their mothers themselves. Empress Xiaomu was able to hide the fact she gave birth to a son from Changhua out of fear that Wan Zhen-er would find a way to extract that information out of him, and the existence of a son remained unknown to him until Xiaomu passed away in 1475, leaving their son Hongzhi to be entrusted in his care. Emperor Changhua would pass away himself in 1487, being followed by his son Hongzhi. Hongzhi dismissed the corrupt officials that had infiltrated the Ming administration during his father's reign, overseeing a return to prosperity for the Chinese. He died in 1505 and was followed by his son Zhengdi. Zhengdi squandered these reforms and elevated a group of corrupt and powerful eunuchs known as the Eight Tigers to manage the administration while he lived the lifestyle of his choosing. Although he married his Empress Xiao Jingyi when he was just 14, all of their children died in childbirth, and Zhengdi instead spent most of his time messing around with prostitutes at the local local brothels. He even commissioned the expensive construction of the Leopard's Chamber, which was a massive brothel situated outside the gates to the Forbidden City, which would also house some of Zhang Di's favorite exotic animals, including lions and tigers. One time, when playing with one of his pet tigers, Zhang Di was mauled and suffered a serious injury, leaving him bedridden for months. This, in addition to many other instances of Zhang Di's erratic behavior, began to earn him a reputation as a spoiled man-child. During one year's annual New Year's land celebration, Zhang Di wanted to put on an extra special fireworks show, so he ordered the normal amount of gunpowder used to be multiplied, which, after being improperly stored, led to a massive explosion, destroying the imperial palace portion of the Forbidden City. Another instance of irresponsible stupidity was the fact that he had so many concubines on his roll call that many were not receiving adequate care of food, and some even starved to death. On several occasions, Zheng Di wanted to roleplay what it was like to be a commoner without having to actually go walk the streets of Beijing, so he would order his ministers to stop their normal duties to set up a fake city street scene within the imperial palace, and then pretend to be commoners interacting with Zheng Di as he perused the fake shops. Any ministers who protested against the obvious insanity of the situation were fired. For some reason, a part of Zheng Di yearned to be someone else, and in 1517 he developed the alter ego Zhu Shou and appointed himself as general to fight against Mongol raiders. He was shockingly extremely talented when commanding troops, and he was able to defeat the Mongols as well as quash two separate rebellions with ease. Zhang Di was incredibly disappointed, however, when he arrived in Ning, which was the site of one of the rebellions, to discover the rebellion leader, the Prince of Ning, had already been captured. Feeling unfulfilled, he pulled the prince from captivity and executed him for fun. Another impactful quirk of Zhang Di was his fascination with foreign cultures, especially Muslim ones. This openness to other cultures led him to initially being accepting of Portuguese explorers' desires to trade in the area. This receptiveness changed, however, after the Portuguese, under the command of General Afonso de Albuquerque, conquered the Malacca Sultanate, which had been an ally of the Ming in Malaysia. Therefore, subsequent landings of Portuguese ships in southern China were met with hostility from the Chinese, who defeated and captured the vessels in a series of lopsided victories. Each new wave of Portuguese traders would be executed and then have their penises cut off and shoved in their mouths and placed along the shore as a warning. In 1521, Emperor Zhangdi was drinking and relaxing on a boat that was meandering along the Grand Canal when he got too drunk and fell off into the murky water below, almost drowning. A dangerous parasite existed in the canal and entered his body, and he died from the infection a few days later. Since none of his children had survived childhood, he was followed by his cousin Jia Jing. At this point, the Chinese held the position of dominant power in Asia, and the belief of Sinocentrism began to take hold amongst the Chinese people that Han culture was the most superior of all cultures on Earth, and that all peoples from outside of China were barbarians who should be lucky to become a vassal of the great Ming dynasty. The impacts of this Sinocentrism were most noticeable with the creation of the tributary system. Under this system, foreign peoples wanting to trade with the Chinese were limited to conduct business activities to a single port. To gain access to their designated port, the foreign party would have to periodically send delegates to the emperor to bring tributes of rare goods or animals, which is known as kowtowing to the empire or to the emperor. Japanese traders, descendants of Chinese settlers themselves, were allowed access to the port city of Ningbo for any trading missions. The shogun, who had ruled Japan up for a long period up until this point, disintegrated as the island split up into smaller rival feudal kingdoms known as daimyos. Without a primary representative, the daimyos began to fight each other for the right to trade with the Chinese. To pacify the situation, Emperor Jiajing sent a fleet of warships to Ningbo. The introduction of the ships caused the daimyos to stop fighting, and they turned on the Chinese fleet, destroying it, escaping during what became known as the Ningbo Incident. The embarrassment led the Ming banning the Japanese from all trade, influencing them to take up piracy. These pirates were known as wokou, and they began by setting up their maritime operations on the numerous small islands found off the coast of Fujian province. The Portuguese, who had also been iced out of trade with the Ming, decided to join the wokou, providing the pirate ships with a new firearm from Portugal known as the arquebus, which was consequently much better than the conventional weapons used by the Chinese and allowed the pirates to obtain terrifying success. The partnership with the Portuguese also provided a great demand for the pirate trade, as the Chinese subjects yearned for the silver and the new starchy food crops that they could provide from the New World. The paper money that had been used in China for a while now had long been losing value, and a great demand for silver coinage took its place, a resource that was remarkably scarce in China. Impacts of the Columbian exchange through the pirate trade may be most noticeable in the introduction of chili peppers from Central America to Sichuan province, where it became a staple of their spicy cuisine. Despite their inflated view of themselves, decades of imperial focus on the threat of a Mongol land invasion meant that the once proud navy had disintegrated into a joke, with over 90% of the fleet being scuttled due to damage or being seized by the pirates. The Ming would continue to be defeated by the pirates until General Qi Zhiguang decided to change tactics by introducing the Mandarin Duck Formation, which organized troops into a boxed defensive position. Once musketeers were added to the formation, they would be protected by melee forces, allowing them to safely reload, a process which took time with the rudimentary firearms. Jiguang pioneered a new military tactic known as volleying, in which the musketeers would reload and fire together, increasing their effectiveness in penetrating the enemy. After the Wokou were successfully expelled from Fujian, Jiajing decided to relax restrictions on foreign trade, giving the Portuguese the small uninhabited coastal island of Macau as a base of operations, which was conveniently located near their designated trading port of Guangzhou. Although the Wokou had over time become increasingly staffed with Chinese sailors, the Ming still blamed the Japanese, and they would continue to be barred from trading. Although Emperor Jiajing was found to be a capable military leader, he was at times easily influenced by mysticism, particularly the belief that by continually drinking the menstrual blood of virgins, he could achieve immortality. To facilitate this diet, he had many young girls held captive in the palace who were fed only mulberry leaves and water. Once the girls could no longer menstruate due to their poor diet, they were expelled and replaced. This harsh treatment was spared for Jiajing's favorite concubine, Concert Duan. So when Jiajing was sleeping in Concert Duan's bed, a group of 10 angry concubines entered the room and attempted to strangle Jiajing to death with a rope. One of the concubine conspirators got cold feet and reported the murder plan to Jiajing's wife, Empress Fang, who sent a company of imperial soldiers just in time to save the emperor's life, although he had fallen into unconsciousness and would remain so for several days. Empress Fang took the liberty to execute all the conspirators by lingqi, which translates to death by 1,000 cuts, in which the perpetrator was tied to a pole in a public square and portions of their limbs were slowly cut off with a knife until they died. Empress Fang decided to execute Concert Duan as well, since she was jealous of her, even though she had nothing to do with the attempted murder. And when Jiajing became conscious, he was devastated and angry that his favorite concubine was killed despite being innocent. In the final years of Jiajing's reign, a fire broke out within the imperial palace. When he learned that Empress Fang was trapped to one of the towers, he declined to rescue her, allowing her to burn to death as retribution for killing Concert Duan. Following this incident, Jiajing would continue to forcibly collect menstrual blood, although now he ordered it to be exclusively collected from girls 8 years and under, since they would have less of a chance of physically overpowering the emperor. Despite his efforts, Jiajing succumbed to father time like all humans do, and he died in 1567, being followed by his son Long Qing.